Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks for joining us this Monday evening, February 11th. A lot to get to tonight here. Pope Benedict, as you know, resigning at the end of the month, making the first pontiff to choose to leave the papacy in nearly 60 years. Let's go now to St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, where we have Lindsay Janis. She joins us with reaction to this major announcement. Lindsay?
The Pope dropped a bombshell renouncing his post and saying he's well aware of the seriousness of his action.
Even his closest aides say they didn't know it was coming. Pope Benedict XVI announcing his resignation and throwing the Catholic Church into uncertainty. Speaking in Latin before a group of cardinals, the 85-year-old pontiff said he was no longer strong enough to fulfill his duties, saying in order for him to govern, quote, both strength of mind and body are necessary, strength which in the last few months has deteriorated in me.
I have to be honest, I'm as shocked and as startled as all of you.
It's remarkable to me in this day and age that he would step down.
Remarkable and shocking because no pope has stepped down for 6 centuries. The decision's being hailed as historic and a potential game changer for the papacy, making it okay to resign. Now, more than 1 billion Catholics worldwide are left wondering who their next leader will be.
The question that many people will have is, where do they come from? What countries, right? Was it going to be an Italian pope after 2 non-Italian popes, or a Latin American pope, given that there's so many Catholics in Latin America? Or
a conclave to elect a new pope will begin by mid-March, in time for Easter. Possible successors include Cardinal Angelo Scola of Milan, Cardinal Marc Huillet of Canada, and Cardinal Leonardo Sandri of Argentina. All are younger than Pope Benedict was when he became the oldest pontiff to be elected in nearly 300 years.
And here at St. Patrick's Cathedral, New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is expected to be summoned to Rome for the conclave. He says choosing the next pope will be, quote, an awesome responsibility. I'm Lindsay Janis reporting live in New York for ABC News. Now back to you.
All right, Lindsay, thank you very much. Now, people all across the country, as for that matter, the globe, they have been reacting to the news they didn't see coming.
Can't even imagine what a demanding job it is, and if he feels that someone younger, someone in better health can deal with situations that are all over the world, I applaud him for that.
I just feel their health conditions and all, they would probably be better.
It's better for him to resign, for his health and for everything.
Physiologically and mentally, he's probably making the right decision.
I'd like to see someone younger. I'd like to see someone maybe from America who better knows the problems we have here with the Catholic Church. I think that would be a wonderful choice.
Now, one of the big questions that remains is where the next pope will come from. Now, some Vatican watchers say it's likely the next pope would come from Europe, like all the predecessors. They, in fact, are all 3 potential frontrunners that come from there. You see them right there on your screen. Or what about maybe having the next pope from Latin America, which has a sizable Catholic population, and with a few areas in this world where the population may be growing in certain parts, 3 candidates there as well. What about North America, something considered inconceivable not too long ago, but now you have 2 names, including one right here from our neck of the woods, Timothy Dolan, that's being considered as well, the Archbishop. Or you could go to Asia. One person from the Philippines apparently is on the short list, the very young Louis Tagle. And what about Africa? Again, could we see the first black pope? Peter Turkson of Ghana is considered a prime candidate as well. In fact, his name came up when the last vacancy came up. And many, many questions remain as it relates to where will the church go in this time of deep uncertainty. And joining us now to sound off on both the process as well as the possibilities is Jeff Field. He's a communications director for the Catholic League. Jeff, I appreciate you joining us tonight. Let me ask you, did you see this coming? And while there's failing health, the doctor for the Pope said there's no imminent grave illness, apparently, that Pope Benedict's suffering from. Did you think you'd see for the first time in 600 years a Pope basically resigned from the job?
No, I can honestly tell you that this morning when I woke up, I didn't expect this. I was getting ready to get on the train, and my mom sent me a text message saying that the Pope was resigning. That I thought she misread something. Did a little bit more research and found out she was in fact right. You know, this is something that is surprising. It's saddening for Catholics across the world. But I think Pope Benedict XVI is doing the humble thing. He's saying that he doesn't have the power or doesn't have the stamina, I guess, to continue his faculties as Pope. And he's doing the humble thing by resigning and letting somebody else fill the shoes.
Now, the church is in an interesting time right now, obviously, with both the abuse scandal in the immediate rearview mirror. One would say certainly with the developments most recently with coming out of the LA Archdiocese, this still a wound for the church. Talk about the climate, and we'll get into a second who the possibilities for the next pope would be, but what the church walks into. You have declining numbers that fill the pews every Sunday. You have, as we see even locally, parochial schools shuttering here with economic concerns, the scandal that I mentioned, and globally here, a concern about, with a declining number of priests and a declining number of parishioners, a church that maybe needs to do a better job of communicating its message here and reaching out to people. Talk about some of the challenges in this 21st century for the next pope.
Well, I think that the declining numbers in the United States and in Europe are of concern. But at the same time, the church is growing in Latin America, it's growing in Africa, and I think that that shows the power of the mission of the church. And I think that, you know, regardless of who the new coming pope may be, he's going to continue with the mission of the Catholic Church in places such as Latin America and Africa, and also try to, you know, bolster up the attendance in North America and in Europe, and also in Asia. So I think that the new coming pope has, you know, a number of obstacles in front of him, but I believe that the new pope will continue in the line of John Paul II and Benedict XVI and be a strong advocate for the Catholic Church.
Now, do you think that the next pope, and the way that this works and the inner workings, maybe you can tell us, but Pope Benedict was certainly somebody who knew his numbers and a longtime aide to the late Pope John Paul II. Do you think that he's probably figured out or will have a hand in the succession plan here? I know obviously we're going to have the College of the Cardinals get together here and close the doors and vote, but behind the scenes here, do you think he's helping to pick the person that will fill his shoes?
Well, I'm not sure that he's going to help pick the person to fill his shoes. But that said, I believe that the groundwork laid by Pope John Paul II and Benedict XVI gives a good blueprint of what the Catholic Church is going to be looking for, what the Cardinals are going to be looking for. A number of the church leadership now has been put in place by John Paul II and by Benedict. So I think that you're going to see much of the same coming out of the next conclave.
You know, if I said to somebody, who do you think has more Catholics, the Philippines or the U.S., I think people would be surprised to know the Philippines actually has more Catholics than the United States. And if you go to Mexico, they literally have almost double the number of Catholics than you'll have in Italy, for example. Yet the betting money is the next pope's probably going to come from Europe like all the other predecessors. And the likelihood of somebody coming from North America, let alone, you know, Asia, unlikely. Do you think we might be surprised that the next pope might be a person of color here, or might be from a part of the world that nobody would have ever thought they'd live to see pope coming from?
You know, I mean, maybe, you know, it's just one day, so I think it's maybe a little too early to say. But, you know, the Catholic Church is growing in places such as Latin America and Africa, so it wouldn't be surprising really to see a pope come from there. But there are one of the leaders out of the gate right now is a cardinal out of Canada, Cardinal Oulet, and he is a prefect for the bishops. He has a very high position in the Catholic Church hierarchy. So I know he's one of the front runners. There's also front runners, like you said, from Europe, and I know the Catholic leadership has traditionally been Eurocentric. But I wouldn't be surprised if a new pope came from Latin America or Africa, just given the fact that the church is growing there.
Jeff Field, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, let's bring it to our table right now. We're joined by Jessica Proud, Republican strategist, and Vice President NLO Strategies, Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And Jessica, when you go down this list, I don't care if they're black, they're Asian, they're whatever, they're all conservative. And while they're trying to go younger here, we're not exactly talking about some 40-year-old that's going to step into the Vatican. This is an opportunity if the church chooses to embrace it, and I'm not delusional. I don't think it's going to be some huge progressive agenda, but if anything, the church has gotten more conservative. We've all had to learn. We had to go back to the literal translation and the prayers that we learned where they had to go back to from what the 1960s version was. I mean, do you think there's any chance the church says, all right, I look at my numbers, I look at my declining priests, I look at the declining monies coming into the church, I look at the declining pews that are getting filled, I got to do something here, or they don't work that way?
They don't work that way. It's not going to happen. But I think the delivery of the message is really important. You know, personally, I would love to see Cardinal Dolan have a real shot at it. It's very unlikely, but he's very affable.
In New York.
He's affable, he's warm, he's funny, he's engaging. Someone like that can really connect with people outside of the church, I think, would be a huge asset. But the church is going to remain conservative. I mean,
and if anybody out there says, well, with a new pope and a youthful pope, maybe they'll let priests marry, or maybe they'll let women in the priesthood, don't hold your breath.
I don't think so.
No.
And Richard, when you consider that Pope Benedict selected most of the cardinals that will be making handpicked most of these cardinals that will be making this selection, I agree with Jessica. The church is very much going to stay tradition, conservative.
Look at Dominic here dropping some Vatican knowledge. Very nice here.
But we agree.
Right. The messaging was that they want this new pope to be more of a missionary of sorts with the messaging, but I think the reality is in the 21st century, Andrew, you got to do international travel, and it's a demanding, taxing job for anybody, let alone somebody. I mean, the current pope, he didn't become pope till he was 78. It's a lot to ask for somebody.
You have to do travel, and in this day and age, you have to be on Twitter, and you have to be on social media, and this is something that,
That's right, the Pope has a Twitter account.
Pope Benedict just got on Twitter and is now moving on. So there are all sorts of areas of outreach.
It's really scary when the Pope's more technologically advanced than I am. Yeah.
There are so many areas of outreach that the next pontiff is going to have to go through and to try to reach new populations. I think it would be interesting to see a younger choice. Though I think the youngest person that was on that list was 55. So it's not like you're talking about a sea change in terms of youth. I don't think you're going to see a Latin or an African pope. I just think that would be a little too much of a shock to the system. So the question remains, how much change is really going to come to the papacy and to the church as a result of this selection?
You know, I do think there's certain things that the new pope, instead of just not changing the message, but just the messaging, I think there's certain things they can do. For example, I think the next pope needs to acknowledge the stain of abuse that's still in this church. And I know a lot of the leaders would love to think it's in the rearview mirror, but it's not. I also think that they can say, we'll have mandatory reporting here. They'll do certain things to assure people that every time we think that the worst, we've heard it all, we'll learn new developments like we learned out of LA, we learned out of Milwaukee before that, and so many other places. They can do more, and as much as they don't want to talk about it anymore, I think they have to. I just see this as an opportunity. I'm not sure everybody else in our church does, Jess, but it's an opportunity, I think, and maybe if they get the right person, they'll never be progressive, but they can at least, I don't know, speak to the laity and include the laity more than talk at the laity.
Well, there's a huge social justice agenda with the church as well, and you see
don't hear
a big
about that as much
right,
anymore.
and there's a disconnect between some of the political rhetoric going on and
Feed the
that.
hungry and clothe the naked, right?
Exactly. I think there is an opportunity.
But you know, Richard, I think we were all caught off guard by this announcement.
Yeah.
But this is nothing new for this pontiff because he said his exact
By the way,
words.
the communications director of the Catholic League heard from his mom. Yeah.
Right.
You heard that?
That was a little troubling.
Right. But he said
good
that,
mood.
that caught my ear.
this pontiff said 3 years ago in 2010 that there could come a time that it's not only the right thing to do, but you have an obligation to step down if you feel. I mean, this is what, the first time in 600 years?
Yeah.
And so it's admirable what he's doing.
All right, we jump to a quick break. When we come back, though, we're going to tell you everything you need to know before the State of the Union tomorrow night. Andrew's going to be down in D.C., but we'll give you first our Clip Notes version on that. Please stay tuned.